Good morning. Happy Sunday. Says Mr. Balson Gorai. Good morning. Happy Sunday to you. So, if you can hear me, should we begin? I'm sorry, I'm very, very late today. Something very weird happened. I'll talk about it. Yeah. So, if I'm audible, we could begin. Yes, says Miss Shivani Rajkarya. Beautiful. So we should begin. Good morning, Nishant, says Mr. Kumar. Good morning, Mr. Kumar. Sorry to keep you waiting. So before we begin, you know what happened? I go for band practice in the weekends, right? So I went to the band practice with my guitar and all. In my guitar was the stand for the phone, right? And my friend asked me for my guitar. So he essentially took my guitar. With the guitar, he took the stand for the phone, right? So there was no phone. That essentially, and then I got it hurriedly in the morning. So that was the trouble. Sorry for the tales of brave Ulysses. But anyway, we should begin the show that we deserve and we don't take a break from, right? The show that we deserve. Best thing in the morning. Bum 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. Good morning, says Mr. Ashutosh Bhandekar and Mr. Nishant Aluwalia. All right, so let's begin. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not every other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, you gotta follow tradition, right? You know the tradition. You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip? We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a copper mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Beautiful. Sublime. Let's do it again. Healing. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we're in this together. That's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. So, there are two things that viewers of Thinker's Frequency already know, but people are late to realize, right? So we've been talking about this for 100 years. I'm sorry, 100 days. And the thing is that Youngistan drinks to good health with no alcohol spirit. No to low alcohol spirits. What these people mean is that Youngistan, that is young people of the country, they're not drinking alcohol anymore. Okay? And the reason why they're not drinking alcohol is because they're health conscious. So they're right at the inference, okay? Sorry, right at the observation, but wrong at the inference. So I'll say it again. When they say that young people are not drinking as much anymore, it's right at the observation. Statistically, they're right. But they're wrong at the inference, right? What they're deriving from the whole spiel is that Youngistan is suddenly becoming health conscious. That's why they're drinking less. Well, that's total BS, right? That's a bunch of BS. The real reason, can you think of the real reasons? Now, viewers, the old viewers of Thinker's Frequency would remember that, we talked about this in first 10 episodes, I guess. We said that young people or people in general are not drinking alcohol anymore, right? The global market for alcohol is falling off. The per capita consumption of alcohol, the percentage consumption of alcohol, are not drinking anymore, right? And it's not just a Western phenomena, it's not US phenomena, it's not European phenomena, it's across the board. It's across the board, right? Now, 100 days ago, when this report came out, where they alleged that, oh, these people, we are facing that these people are not drinking anymore. So, what could be the reason for this particular play, right? And the report says that they're becoming health conscious, that they're actually thinking about health. That's why they're not drinking alcohol. And we said that this is a bunch of BS. The real reason is, as Mr. Varun Bhardwaj says, uh, youngsters are smoking more pot. Yeah, it's alternate drugs that have taken the place of alcohol. And alternate drugs are more and more common these days. And as their ubiquity sort of becomes more and more pronounced, people are seeing that people are not drinking alcohol anymore as much as they used to, right? But the Indian research firm didn't say that, right? Indian research firm is still not saying that. But when it came to a US research firm, the same company, essentially Nelson, which did it in India, the same company, when it talked about alcohol consumption in US, they didn't say health conscious BS, right? They just said that Indians are not drinking alcohol because of what Mr. Bhardwaj says, pot, right? Marijuana. So, because now, why do you think the two research companies who are presumably aware of what's going on in both India and US came out with different studies as far as the same, different reasons as far as the same cause is considered? Why do you think people in US came out with that inference and people in India came out with this bullshit called good health, right? Why do you think that happened? Why do you think the Indian research firm came out with an obvious lie that is good health while talking about low alcohol consumption? Can you guess why that happened? Right? Because in the list of things, they've not mentioned one thing which is most pronounced in the Western hemisphere, let's say, or Western part of the world, right? Because India is not legal. Marijuana is not legal in India. The consumption of marijuana is not legal in India. So while it's growing, especially in the tier 1 cities, right, and while it's growing, especially amongst the youth, amongst the adolescents, right, the market research company doesn't want to mention it because, because it's gonna screw them up, right? The government is like, hey, we just read your report. Can you come to our office for a second? And that's gonna be an awkward conversation, right? So, Youngistan drinks to good health with no to low alcohol spirit. Gen Z millennials moderating consumption, opting for non-alcoholic flavored beverages. So these people are saying they're opting for non-alcoholic flavored beverages, and that's why alcohol consumption is going down. Mr. Bhardwaj says, plus pot is getting legalized in many of the states of US. Yeah, that's why. That's why they could openly mention it, right? And not in India, where it's not legal. So the market research firm is like, hey, let us save our ass. Let's just say that they're getting healthy. These kids are getting healthy, right? Now, this is one situation. We also talked about how the companies are trying to navigate through it, right? How the alcohol companies are trying to navigate through the lower, decreasing alcohol spend or alcohol consumption in India, right? You remember that? We talked about this in great detail. What do you think is the way forward for these companies? The alcohol companies in India, how do you think, if you were an alcohol guy, right, and you saw India and you saw, oh, the consumption is going down, what would you do? That's a very good question. And that's a question that should make you think. And I would request an answer from you. Quick, please. Sugar on top. Yeah, it's a Pulp Fiction reference. Anybody? Can anybody guess what these companies are looking at? We've discussed this a lot at Thinkers Frequency. Premium segment, says Mr. Tiwari. You're right. So 66% of all alcohol sold in India is not, you know, is not premiumized. It's not organized. It's a very low spend kind of a play. And what the companies are trying to do is trying to go into the premium market, right? So what they see is that there's a lot of unbranded liquor which is floating around. And if those unbranded guys shift to branded guys and the branded guys shift to premium branded guys, right? That could be a way to save the industry. That's why Imperial Blue got sold to Tilak Nagar, right? Tilak Nagar Industries recently bought Imperial Blue from who owns Imperial Blue? Pernod Record, right? So they bought Imperial Brew from Pernod Record. Why? Because for Tilak Nagar, Imperial Blue was a bit of premiumization, and for Pernod Record, Imperial Blue was economy zone. So they want to go further up the chain. And there's some really stupid take by Miss Ruchira Jaitley. She's the CMO of Diageo. Uh, Diageo is huge, of course. She says Gen Z is not drinking less, but following the zebra stripping trend, where every alcoholic drink is followed by a non-alcoholic one. So the CMO of Diageo says, "Oh, wait! I've got a spin to this. I've got a spin to this, guys." And they're like, "Okay." They're not drinking less, but they're following a zebra. What did she say? A zebra drinking a stripping trend, where they're following an alcoholic drink with a non-alcoholic drink. So they're not drinking less, but they are drinking less. That's her argument. And then she also says, and they're drinking more cocktails and premium. So value wise, they're not drinking less yet. Value wise, they're not drinking less yet. What does that mean? Oh man, people are sometimes so ill-equipped to handle, uh, you know, counter news. It's just startling. She's the CMO of Diageo, and look at the spin. It's almost unbelievable. Mr. Bhadwaj says, get better tasting non-alcoholic beverage or lobby for India to legalize pot. Haha. If pot gets legalized, they're not gonna survive, the alcohol companies. Then they'll have to sell pot, and the problem with pot is that nobody needs branded pot, right? Pot has it has very little scope for consolidation, or let's say organized market. It's very complicated, right? Pot can be sold and can be made very independently. That's why pot uh, is not mainstream, right? Because it's very hard to regulate it. It's very hard to actually bring it under one branded umbrella. Why would you take, let's say, ITC spot, for example, right? And so that's going on with alcohol. I agree. Very little product differentiation. Thanks. So the beauty is that it's not just pot that's going up, right? It's also alternate drugs which are much heavier. And speaking of pot and how alcohol companies cannot fight pot, a similar thing happened with the cigarette industry. A similar situation happened with the cigarette industry, where they got something new coming and taking their shine away. Can you guess which industry was that? It's a very similar play, very coincident play, collinear play. Can you guess which industry was that? Um, I'll give you a second. Can you guess which industry was that? Got steamrolled by something new, but they eventually vape. Mr. Bhandekar, you're right. Mr. Tushar Tiwari, not BD, not BD, but vape. Yeah. So vaping industry started burgeoning in the country, and the cigarette lobby was so strong that they essentially killed the industry at once. They killed the industry at once. And then whatever vapes are selling in India, they're selling under the market. They're selling in a totally illegal way. So vaping could have been an industry which essentially broke the chokehold of cigarettes in the smoking market, right? And are, some people say arguably healthier than smoking because they don't make tar and so on and so forth. But they killed it. And I have a personal experience with that industry steamrolling. So I used to run Testament, the market acquisition company. So we were working with a trade show which is called India Vape Exhibition. Okay. So that trade show, essentially what it wanted to do, what it wanted to have like a B2B trade show for vaping as an industry. And it was done by a Ukrainian company, by the way, in 2016. I guess it's 2016 or 17. Okay. So a Ukrainian company, very big, they do vape shows across the world, right? So they were coming to India. They had booked the venue. If you know about Greater Noida's, exhibition center, India International Exhibition Center in Greater Noida. That's where they had booked, and they had chosen us as the marketing partner. Okay, so we were doing the marketing and essentially business acquisition for all these vape guys. So what happens is that if you're trying to create a trade show, it's a B2B trade exhibition, right? You're not trying to get customers in a B2B trade show. It's a trade show. You want business customers. You want a guy who says, okay, I'm ordering and I want 10,000 vapes or 5,000 vapes, right? And these could be real wholesalers which supply to the pan shops or the pan shops itself, right? They could be those guys as well. So our job was to bring wholesalers and even retailers from Delhi NCR, but wholesalers specifically from north and west of India for the vape show, you know. So we were on, we did this for a living. So we were very sorted. We hired people, we trained them to go to wholesalers, bring them onto the vape show, because that could be a huge amount of business, right? At that moment, vape was unregulated, right? 2016-17. So we were working, everything was great. And 10 days before the exhibition, the whole exhibition, 5 days or 10 days before the exhibition, we get to hear that the exhibition has been cancelled. Okay. Now, exhibition cancellation is no joke, because a B2B trade show takes like crores of rupees. It's a very big event, right? You bring wholesalers, you bring retailers, you have stalls, you have suppliers. There's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of you have to book a very expensive venue, which is India International Exhibition Center, and so on, right? So while we were working for these guys, and while we invited all of the wholesalers and retailers that we could find, thousands of them, like 6,000 or something, right? They cancelled the exhibition, and then we got to know that the cigarette lobby essentially talked to the authorities, and they shut them down, man. They shut that Ukrainian guy down. Thankfully for us, he paid us. We got our payments, but they shut him down. So if that event would have happened, the vaping industry could have tipped in a big way, because what happens is, let's say if you get 6,000 wholesalers, or not 6,000 wholesalers, but 2,000 wholesalers and 4,000 retailers at a show, right? And then there are suppliers. And if they meet, and if there are deals, so let's say if a wholesaler takes a stock of 5,000 vapes, right? There could have been like 10 lakh or 50 lakh vapes sold in that particular event itself, right? In nutshell. And if those deals would have gone, you can imagine how mainstream vape would have been, just basis that one single event. But that got shut down. So companies try their best to actually stop whatever can happen which can hurt them, and vape is in that direction. Alcohol is in that direction. Mr. Bhardwaj said something very interesting. Non-alcoholic beverages. So that's what these people are doing. So you have you heard of something called Bud Zero? So that's a non-alcoholic play. A lot of these alcoholic companies are venturing into non-alcoholic, situation, and let's see what happens. So even alcohol guys will lobby for pot. So they are already trying, right? And actually, pot is illegal in India already. So they can't lobby something. They can't force the authorities to act on it, right? And they do that still, right? So Himachal Pradesh and Punjab, all of these people, they suddenly wake up someday and they do a lot of raids. And most of these raids must be at the behest of these guys. But the point is that this brings us to the debate where does banning really make sense, right? So a lot of people start saying that, hey, real money betting banning doesn't make sense because most of the people who get into the real money betting play will go to the illegal guys, right? Now, the problem with that argument is that not everything is equally hard or easy to ban or regulate. You understand? Not everything is equally hard or easy to regulate or ban. What I mean to say is that banning pot, right, might not lead to the same effects as banning real money betting. Because a real money betting business, the illegal one, is very different from a pot growing business, an illegal one. You understand? Because a guy can grow pot in his garden, right? And a small field somewhere, right? And he can be away from any sort of scrutiny. There's not a lot of money in play. There's a lot of cash operations. So you cannot expect the ban on pot to work as well as the ban on real money betting would work. Because running an illegal betting shop is very hard. Is much harder than running a small pot operation. You understand what I'm saying? So this is very, very important. So whenever people say that banning is not a solution, regulating is. The answer to that is it depends on what you're banning and what you're regulating. It's very, very case to case. Okay? Different colors of Nishant, from drug collaboration to business news. Now this is very important. So let's say if you ban LSD, okay? Banning LSD would lead to real problems because growing LSD, or let's say making LSD, right? It's a lab kind of a process. So you need a decent lab where you can make clean LSD. And because LSD is like micrograms, right? It's 300 micrograms. That's one stamp of LSD. So if you are to essentially ban LSD, those labs are going to be in trouble, right? And they'll not be able to make LSD as freely as they would. So it would be very difficult for LSD to become mainstream. So banning LSD would actually curtail LSD. But banning pot would not really curtail pot, right? Because pot is easy to grow and easy to, let's say, and it's also a low value product. So LSD, a stamp would cost you like $2,000, but pot is just nothing, right? So there's a lot. So every ban is very different, and the ramifications of that ban are also very different. So real money betting ban is different from, let's say, a pot ban, and how they're both gonna play out is also very different. So when somebody says that, hey, banning is not the solution, the counter to that is banning of what? Banning of what? Right? So that particular bit, a good digression from because this had become a very big contention. Everybody who was supporting the real money betting players said that they just all gonna shift to illegal betting, and I said it's not that easy. It's not that easy. Have you seen a real money betting shop, illegal one? How they actually get people to bet on the platform? So I'll tell you how they do it. We've discussed this, but not in depth. So what they do is essentially they get bank accounts. So they have a dealer who gets bank accounts from far off places, like from villages, like very poor people who have no idea on how to use that bank account. They get those bank accounts in bulk. Okay, so let's say they get 20 of these bank accounts open for them, right? And these bank accounts belong to very poor people who have no means of accessing those bank accounts. In those bank accounts, they start taking money from people. And you know how they take money? There's a website like radhe.xyz or something. In that website, they call people. They say, hey, there's this website and you can bet on this website using us. And the guy says, okay. The guy says that, hey, I want to bet on this particular play. He sends a WhatsApp. These people send a QR code of that bank account, of that personal bank account. It's not a company bank account. Okay. So they send money on that personal bank account. Using that personal bank account, they actually place that bet on this guy's behalf. When the bet happens, right? Now this guy says, hey, I want to withdraw now. Okay, at this price, at this. These people withdraw money and pay through another bank account, right? Because cyclical transaction. Now what happens is a bank account, one single bank account belonging to a very poor person with no anything cannot take lakhs of rupees, right? But these illegal betting shops need a lot of money. So they have monthly deposits of 3 crores, 4 crores. So this bank account got lakhs of rupees. Suddenly the bank blocked the bank account. The bank said, hey, fishy transaction, block. Now this illegal betting shop asked their vendor to get that bank account sorted so they can get their money back. Because now that 4 lakh rupees are stuck in that one bank account. And there are 10 of such bank accounts, 20 of such bank accounts, 30 of such bank accounts, right? And sometimes these illegal betting shops don't even pay the guy. So let's say if they placed a bet of 4,000 bucks, right? Just giving you an example. And they got very lucky, they won 2 lakh bucks, okay? These people say, sorry, we won't pay you. Go screw yourself, right? And that sort of undermines the trust of the larger public for these illegal illegal betting shops. Now, once that happens, less people get involved. So can you imagine the difficulty of operation? Now, once that bank account, let's say, unlocks their money, they had 6 lakhs parked in that bank account and 30 of such bank accounts, right? All of that money parked in there. They get that money back. They got that money back. Now, they can't transfer it in their accounts. You understand what I'm saying? So they need to transfer it. Now, converting that money into black is also a problem, right? How do you withdraw all that cash? Okay? How do you withdraw all that cash? So let's say you withdraw all that cash, you take all the black money, okay? And you give that bank account back. Now, how do you actually use that black money? You've got to convert that black money into white as well. Because you won't be able to use it, right? You can't like buy a car for buy a Fortuner for 50 lakh rupees cash, right? So you've got to turn that black into white. For that, you need some sort of a Hawala operator, which takes 5%. So you imagine the difficulty of running an illegal betting shop, and imagine the difficulty of actually playing via an illegal betting shop. So the guys who said, oh, they're all going to shift to online, they have no clue, they have no clue. They don't know jack shit, Lebowski. So that's the play. You understand how complicated it gets as soon as real money betting, right now, Razorpay processes your payments. Razorpay processes your withdrawal requests. It's not written by a code, right? It's frictionless. It's seamless. It's beautiful. What happens when all that goes away? Everything comes to standstill. Maybe a percentage of the bettors actually shift to illegal, but that percentage is a very small percentage, right? The economy otherwise goes for a toss. Mr. Tiwari writes, yeah, so many trust issues even for a gambler. Oh, it's very difficult, man. It's not an easy business. If I tell you that, hey, you will be able to make like 15-20 lakh rupees a month, right? You have to manage a team of, let's say, 20 callers, and then all the banking issues that I talked about, and then all the police issues that might come, and then you'll have to pay bribes, and then you'll have to convert that black money into white, and you've got to deal with all sorts of people. And then, because it's not coded right, so these people, my friend, they need to keep waking up all night. So they can get a withdrawal request at 2:30 a.m., right? And they have to wake up and process that withdrawal request manually, because it's all manual, right? So at 2:30 a.m., 3:30 a.m., so they don't have a fresh sleep, right? My friend and his partner, they are basically awake 24/7. That invites drug troubles, right? Because then you got to take some cocaine, because you got to keep waking up. So it's very difficult, very difficult. So if I tell you that, hey, you'll be able to make 15-20 lakh rupees a month, right? Which is much better than what you make in your shit job, right? Would you do this particular work, right? The answer would most likely be no. And even if the answer is yes, you'll bail out in like 15-20 days, right? Because the pressure will just be too great. So not every banning is, the same. Oh God, we spent a lot of time on that. Moving on. IT hiring takes a backseat in tariff roller coaster ride. Staffing companies see muted recruitment in industry by second half of 2026. So these people had actually, had some projections of hiring, and they're not meeting those projections. So the numbers say that, you know, sector was expected to add about 10 to 11% net headcount at the start of FY26, but the outlook has since moderated to 6 to 8%, right? Which should be surprising, but not to viewers of Thinkers Frequency, because we've been saying this for 100 days now. And if you avoided all that, congratulations. But we've known this. IT has a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties to face. And of course, IT has essentially decoupled from being an employer en masse. So IT used to be a very big employer for the country, not anymore, right? So that's gonna definitely change, definitely. Shouldn't be a surprise to any regular viewer of Thinkers Frequency. We've discussed it in serious amount of depth, so we won't talk about it. Speaking of real money betting and everything, Mr. Kavin Mittal's Hike has shut down after 13 years. So Hike used to be a messaging company. It came on as a competitor to WhatsApp, right? Indian competitor to WhatsApp. It didn't really make a dent there, so it essentially went off. Hike. Then Hike, Mr. Kavin Mittal essentially pivoted Hike to Rush, which I didn't really know about, to be honest. I didn't know Rush even existed. What is Rush? I didn't know. But essentially, Rush was a real money betting play. So imagine the scion of Airtel, Bharti Mittal, right? He was essentially doing the real money betting play, which is pretty sad. But then India banned, and he had gotten like revenues of 500 million over the last 4 years, because betting makes money, right? It's not hard to make money in betting. Betting is all about money. So even my friend I told you about, and the other people, they have like monthly deposits of 3 to 4 crores, right? Regardless of what. So 30-40 crores worth of yearly deposits, right? So you can imagine the money they deal with. So they could generate money. It's not a big deal. So $500 million, but then India banned real money betting, and Mr. Kavin Mittal actually wrote a big post saying that we'll now shift to US, it's bad regulation, and so on and so forth, it should be regulated and whatnot. But then he's decided to shut Rush altogether. So Hike and Hike and Rush, after raising $260 million, are no more. And he says, we could have pivoted into something new, and but for me, for everybody in the play, that pivot doesn't make sense, and I'd rather do something else than this, right? Me and my team and everybody. So he had like 4 million left, which he used to pay his vendors and pay investors back. So 4 million is what investors are gonna get after investing $260 million. But that shouldn't be a very big news, because people like SoftBank essentially gave that money. And $260 million is like change, right? Pocket change for Bharti Scion, right? So that story ends, unfortunately, for what it's worth. I had one of my mentors, at my company, a very, very good person. He was the CTO of Hike. Okay, when Hike had 100 million users. So when Hike was at the peak, he was the CTO of Hike, and great, extraordinary person, perhaps one of the best people you'll meet. So he was very kind to mentor us, and he told us something very interesting as far as Hike is considered. Okay, so what he said was that Hike did a lot of work, but Hike couldn't beat WhatsApp. Why couldn't Hike beat WhatsApp? Because Hike did a lot of things, right? Hike tried messaging without internet and so on and so on and so on, a lot of things, but it couldn't beat WhatsApp, because in a market, he said to me as an example, that in a market, let's say if there were 30 people, okay, and with all the marketing, all the beautiful marketing that we did, we got to 29 people, right? Let's say there are 30 people in this market. WhatsApp has all 30 in the network. Hike goes to market from 0, it goes up to 29 people. So right now, WhatsApp has 30 people, Hike has 29 people. Even with that play, in 2 weeks, Hike's entire user base crumbled to 0. because of network effect. So network effect is that the value of the network is squared of the number of people. So while it's 2930, the square is very different, right? And eventually everybody leaves Hike and everybody shifts to WhatsApp. Just 1 second, folks. Just 1 second. Yeah. So that was Hike. That was network effect. So network effects are so strong, that's so incredibly strong that it's impossible to beat. Network effects are the only uh, competitive moat you can speak. So when anybody says moat, what's your moat? What's your moat? There is no moat. There is no moat that is practically viable and which can actually protect you from competition. There is no moat whatsoever. The only moat that exists in this day and age, it's not intellectual property, it's not anything, it's network effect, right? If your product has network effects and serious network effects, that's the only thing that which can keep you safe, right? That's what Sanjeev sir also says. We are number one because we are number one, right? Naukri is number one because it's number one. So why is it number one? Because once you become number one, it's more job seekers. Because there are more job seekers, there are more recruiters. Because there are more recruiters, there are more job seekers because the platform becomes more responsive, and so on and so on and so on, right? So you're number one because you're number one, and that's the beauty of network effects. Moving on. Tata Tech to buy Germany's ES Tech Group for 75 million. Tata Group's digital engineering services, it's acquiring Germany-based ES Tech Group for 75 million, deepening its presence in Europe. So some deal action happening. Sexual harassment complaints at top 30 companies up 6%. 6% is not really, 6% is, of course, any growth as far as this particular play is not nice, but is 6% on the same base as far as the number of people are considered? Is 6% accounting for the rise of the formal employment in the country? Or is 6% keeping that constant? Because if that's constant, they're talking about 6% per capita, let's say. That's very bad, right? But if it's just 6% growth when it comes to the overall industry is growing, it basically means it's static, which is not good news, of course, right? It should be zero. Posh complaints. But this particular reporting is faulty, is what I'll say. Moving on. Airport hotels to give wings to hospitality sector business. Well, that's no surprise for anybody. Airport, hotels are being targeted by MICE industry. MICE industry is essentially exhibitions, conferences, events, and so on and so forth, right? So that's what's happening. IHCL acquiring a 192 room brownfield hotel, and so on and so forth. Myanmar rebels par China's rare earth ream. So we've talked a lot about how everything changes with politics, right? With politics. And when you talk about, let's say, Bangladesh, when you talk about Sri Lanka, when you talk about Nepal, when you talk about Myanmar. So Myanmar had a coup in 2021, right? Who benefited from that coup? China benefited from that coup because China essentially gained all the rare earth minerals that exist in Myanmar, right? Now, India has been trying to get access to some of those, but China stops everything, right? So just imagine a businessman working in Myanmar, and then suddenly a coup happens, and basically the military takes it over, and then you cannot do anything about it, right? For India, mining in region along China border pose political and logistical challenges. So Myanmar is a very, very complicated play. The Prime Minister of Myanmar at one point, she was jailed for 27 years or something, And when she got free from that jail, she was actually given a Nobel Prize or something, right? But then when she presided, the army essentially sent all the, there's a tribe which is an Islamic tribe, which is a problem for India because of that immigration. uh, I'm forgetting that name. There's a tribe from Myanmar. Can you guess which one was that? So they came to India, and then it became a bit of a problem, and everybody said that you cannot allow migration of this particular tribe. Myanmar government essentially threw them away. The army threw Rohingya. Mr. Tiwari, thank you so much. So Rohingyas, when that army action took place, her noble community actually took her prize back. So that's what happened. Very difficult time. Moving on. A lot of political chit chat which we best not discuss. Government proposes approved list of wafer for solar modules effective June 2028. So there are barriers, right? There are tariff barriers, there are non-tariff barriers. Barriers to protect your industry, to usher your industry, to grow your industry, to actually create your industry. You've got to have some sort of protection to create your industry. Let's say if you want to start your steel industry, right? You'll never be able to start your steel industry if you allow Chinese imports, right? Because China makes more steel than the rest of the world combined. And China can basically send you stuff for free because there's so much of steel, there's overcapacity, and they have to do something. So they'll send steel at losses, at prices which will be impossible to compete, right? So then you need some sort of tariffs, some sort of duties, which we've talked about. So we've talked about how steel industry has lobbied for some duty protections against Chinese imports, how Nepal was essentially becoming a route of Chinese steel exports to India. Now, we've talked a lot about that. However, there's a non-tariff barrier as well. What what countries do sometimes is that instead of tariff barriers, they decide that this is what we're gonna do. Our buying will happen from these companies or Indian companies, and so on and so forth. So let's say if you have some sort of buying norm by government institutions, because government capex is what runs this country, right? Most of the GDP comes from the government capex essentially, right? If you take government capex away, there's no GDP, right? In most countries, not just India, in all countries essentially. So, what the government has done is for solar modules, they've made a list of wafers which they're gonna be buying from June 2028, and that's like a non-tariff barrier for the wafer play. And what that wafer non is that there has to be three companies, more than three companies, and those three companies cannot have common ownership, and so on and so forth, right? Because this particular play, it's a double-edged sword, right? You can accuse crony capitalism if it comes to this, right? So just to avoid those things, there are some norms, but the government has proposed approved list of wafers for solar modules effective June 2028, which is okay. Adani Power is investing 3 billion in setting up a Bihar plant, right? 2,400 megawatt plant in Bihar. And Vedanta is seeking for a CCI nod for Jayaprakash Associate Limited, JAL, Jayaprakash JP Group. Now they Vedanta has come up with its bid. JP had like a debt of 57,000 crores that became bad, right? The present deal value was 12,000 crores and then some money. So what Vedanta is gonna do is it's gonna 3,800 crore upfront and then 2.5 to 3,000 crore every year, right? That's the plan. Vedanta is already in a lot of debt, and Vedanta Group is trying to manage its debt. It's gonna take some more debt for JP Group. I feel very sad about JP Group. Have you ever been to Greater Noida? It's built very well. It could have been India's Dubai, if not for politics. So politics ruined the group, and in process of ruining that group, they ruined the city, man. They ruined so much of prospect, such a great prospect. They just screwed it up. And I wrote a very big article on it. It went viral. But it's a real case study, right? Real case study. How politics, and this once again proves, right? In India, businesses rise and fall with changing dispensations, right? Changing power schedules. So if there's Congress, you'll see suddenly pro-Congress empires ushering up, and they're gonna be huge. When it's BJP, you're gonna see some pro BJP, or let's say, so JP group was very pro Mayawati government, Madam Mayawati government. And as soon as Mayawati government went out, so while Mayawati government was there, they got a lot of projects. They started delivering beautiful work, extraordinary work. Nothing comes close, right? And as soon as that government went out, they just got screwed by a train, right? Moving on. PSU banks to drive Vikasit Bharat 2024. Well, that's okay. It's raining disaster. There's a deep dive which has been done on rains and ecological disasters that are happening in the Indian Himalayan range, right? Uttarakhand and so on and so forth. A very complicated play. And they're saying that it's happening because of rapid and unchecked development. And, the other side says that development is important. You cannot stop development. You'll have to implement it. And the real reason is essentially the lack of ingenuity or lack of technical prowess of these people, while they are working on these projects. So they don't have the know-how. They just dump it all in the river, right? All the construction material, they construct stuff and then they just dump it in the river. Now, when that river beds get the interference of the newfound construction material, and when the levels rise due to rains and glacier melts, everything starts flooding. So it's not development, it's not climate change, it is essentially bad implementation of a good idea, right? Or let's say bad implementation of development projects. That's the problem. And that's exactly what's happening. Frequency of natural disasters leading to much bigger problems have grown up. So that's what's going on. Himalayan states have been battered by monsoon calamities. The annual ordeal is exacerbated by rampant expansion, unchecked urban growth, and the glaring absence of robust early warning systems. So one of my mentors is essentially, into warning systems. So he has a very nice business, but very government dependent, so not that nice. But they made warning systems for sea calamities. So they installed all the early warning systems, right? You have like very, very big racks of speakers, right? Which essentially warn the public in like 5 kilometer square area, right? That kind of warning systems, his company essentially tied up with a European company and they did this work. But those projects are in serious problems, right? Right after COVID, all that went in a limbo. Moving on. But we really need all that when it comes to development in the hills, right? It needs much more sensitivity to the ecological play than current builders essentially have, right? They're very ill-equipped for this kind of a project. These kinds of projects. Just imagine these guys are not being able to do something proper in normal Delhi roads, right? They're screwing it up. Bangalore roads, Delhi roads are a disaster show. Delhi is a shithole right now because of bad roads. Delhi had bad people always, but at least the roads were good. But that's not true anymore, right? So Delhi is a real troubled place. If they can't make roads in Delhi, how do you expect them to make proper roads or safe roads or well constructed projects? How do you expect them to execute them in the hills, right? So that's the play. Moving on, there's a very interesting deep dive which has been published. It's called Sherlock Meets Shadi. So what this report says is that brides and grooms are essentially hiring a lot of detectives to they're hiring detectives to do background verification. So background verification, they're actually going to, some detectives are following brides, they are uncovering hidden affairs, hidden relationships, some hidden addictions. Like the girl said that she didn't smoke, but she did, right? Some sort of gambling addictions, and they found out that the sources of income are convoluted. So the girl essentially works in a very, very normal job, but then she's been able to afford an extravagant lifestyle. And the detective found out that she was running that phone scam, right? Where she, so marriage in this market, is a pretty. It needs a what do you call it? Pradhan Mantri Bahaduri Puraskar. Right? Just imagine, man. You're gonna get married, and suddenly you see some, Sherlock Holmes following you in the background, and he's basically, talking about, he's taking your pictures and all, and then they find out that, hey, man, this guy, he said that he makes this much of money, but half of it goes to his girlfriend. It's funny, but only when it doesn't happen to you. So, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be insensitive, but it's very tough, man. Uh, yeah, following women on vehicle on foot, often posing as local vendors or drivers, fixing GPS devices on vehicles to track movements, right? Social media scan, checking post photos, connection, that's easy. Phoning workplaces or acquaintances under a false identity, photographs and electronic bugging, taking photos, hiding mics and recorders in bags, financial patterning. My God, amazing stuff, man. Amazing stuff. So, after a hearty lunch in Lakshmi Mishthan, the detective went about his task, tailing the bride to be. He drove towards Panna Meena, its Kun, and there he, pretended to be a local guide. Hidden relationship, concealed smoking habit, misrepresented family business. And Mr. Tiwari says, again, privacy is a myth. Yeah, so we've discussed this. Privacy is a myth, man. Privacy is a total myth in every way. It's not just about this play. Even as a governmental proceeding, privacy is a myth. And then there's this lawyer who talks about families need to remember that hiring detective doesn't give them right to invade someone's privacy. Then what is this? Why are we hiring the detective for? If we can't invade somebody's privacy, why would we actually hire a detective, right? Then we would just ask, right? If we are essentially hiring detectives, it's obviously invasion of privacy, but lawyers are used to this kind of BS. But anyway, the point is privacy is a myth, right? Privacy is a myth when it comes to technology firms. WhatsApp knows what you're doing. Everybody knows what you're doing. Privacy is a myth when it comes to the governmental activities, government initiatives, because the government, if it wants, it can know everything, right? Whatever you do, secured emails, signal, come on, right? So the only hedge against privacy, we discussed that, I guess it was yesterday, I don't know when we discussed that, but the only hedge against privacy, what is the hedge against privacy? What is your protection against privacy? Can anybody say that? Can anybody think of that if somebody doesn't know? There are a lot of viewers today. So if you don't know, what do you think is your protection against privacy? Now that you know that there is no privacy, privacy is a myth. What is your hedge against, SNYAS, sannyas, says Mr. Tushar. Mr. Tiwari talking about sannyas? That is not very surprising. Not interested. Mr. Ashutosh, Mr. Ashutosh Bhandikar saying not interesting. Right? So, the only hedge against privacy that you have is to not be interesting. Right? If you're not interesting, if you're a boring guy, if you're so boring that people are not even interested in knowing what you are up to, not the government, not the tech companies, not your competitors, not your groom to be or bride to be, right? Not their family. If you're not interesting, it's all cool, right? But if you become interesting, then privacy is a myth. So that's a very, very big insight, by the way. Not everybody thinks of it like that, but it is the truth. It is the truth. Moving on. NATO ban on Russian oil, tariffs on China could end war, says Mr. Trump. So, Mr. Trump has shifted his rhetoric from away from India to China. He's back to China now. He says NATO is buying a lot of Russian oil, which is bewildering to me, which I can't believe. So Turkey is a part of the NATO alliance. Turkey is like the third largest buyer of Russian oil. And they're like, how are you buying Russian oil? Come on. What's going on? Stop Russian oil and tariff China. Now he's talking to NATO. So he talked to EU. Didn't happen. Now he's talking to NATO. That, hey, at least you guys stop the war. So he's that guy who nobody is listening to. Right? And that's what's happening. Speaking of US, Charlie Kirk, Mr. Charlie Kirk, rest in peace, he who was assassinated, his killer uh, is somebody called a 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. And that killer is essentially living with a trans gender partner, right? So a guy who's now a trans woman, that's what they call it. So he has a trans connection, and very very unbelievably, I mean extraordinarily shockingly, Mr. Kirk was shot when a debate was on as far as trans shootings are considered. So he was saying that shootings are these trans shootings are the real cause of American shootings. So that was something he was arguing. He was basically arguing for the Second Amendment. So people who don't know U.S. politics, there's something called First Amendment. First Amendment is right to free speech. Okay, in US it's called First Amendment. Then there's something called Second Amendment. Second Amendment is the gun rights. So gun rights are essentially, why do Americans have gun rights? Okay, why do Americans have gun rights? Americans have gun rights because the founding fathers of America uh, saw that the government could be tyrannical, right? A tyrannical government is a bit of a problem, right? What if the government turns against you? What if it becomes the dictatorship and starts curtailing your rights, right? How would you fight the government, right? So they said that a way to fight the government, or the way to keep the government in check, is the Second Amendment. You enable people to defend themselves not just against other people or outlaws, but against the government itself. So Second Amendment is uh, guns for all, to fight the tyrannical government of tomorrow. That's what the Second Amendment is, right? So what the anti-Second Amendment guy says, that gun should be banned because you can't fight the government or whatever. It leads to gun violence. And then they say, then a very good argument that is made, that Mr. RFK Jr. made recently at a Senate hearing. He said, if you're talking about gun violence, right? If you're talking about gun shootings, why does Switzerland not have gun shootings as much as America, right? They have per capita the same amount of guns. Why does Switzerland not have shootings as much as US does, right? And the answer is because US has its population on SSRIs. SSRIs are the psychiatric drugs. So there's a lot of news coming around SSRIs, that they are a scam, and then they lead to a lot of gun violence, and they lead to a lot of problems, and SSRIs are not the treatment, and so on and so forth. So these people are fighting against SSRIs and the trans movement. So trans movement and SSRIs are pretty hand in glove, because most, a lot of trans, I don't know what to say. I don't want to touch a political nerve here, but a lot of people in the trans movement are also very big consumers of SSRIs, directly or indirectly, right? And a lot of trans, most of these gun shootings, a lot of them are essentially trans aggravated shootings, right? So they're saying that, is pharma against the gun problem? That is the argument, right? Is it the guns, or is it SSRIs which are essentially driving people to this kind of behavior? Because Switzerland has guns. So it's a very interesting mix. RFK Jr. Is doing some incredible work. I see a lot of people, the science people, the people who are like science, the people who say that they know science and you don't know science, right? Those kind of people, they are essentially very anti RFK Jr. But I am super pro RFK Jr. I've always said, I've read the book, The Real Anthony Fauci. It's extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. Everybody should read that book. It should be in the curriculum. The kind of stuff, that has come out as far as the whole pharma play is considered. And then, in one of the Senate hearings, as RFK's Jr., who was a lawyer, right? The people say, are you a doctor? Are you a doctor? Are you a doctor? That's what they said while... So he said, I'm not a doctor, but I regularly depose doctor as a lawyer. And I have to earn my credentials not because of titles, but by my arguments. Now, isn't that like the perfect answer? Like, I don't depend on titles, but the validity of my arguments, right? So that's huge, right? So that's going on. A lot of action as far as RFK is considered. he's also talked about vaccines, of course, right? That kids are getting vaccinated, and he said that 33,000 doctors Medicare payments have been altered basis their position on the childhood vaccines, right? And he says basically you are coercing doctors to push these vaccines on kids, which is wrong. So a lot of action, a lot of it is up in the air right now. Very complicated, very complicated matter. But you've got to follow the RFK journey to actually appreciate the guy. If you don't, and if you say it's not science, and I know science and you don't know science, you can just go screw yourself, is what I'd say, right? Because there's no one entity which has some control over science. Anybody can read science, anybody can, dive deep into a topic, regardless of their titles, regardless of anything. They can actually go inside, study it in depth, right, and do whatever is necessary. A lot of science has come from people who are not really scientists, right? So a lot of action has happening as far as the Mr. Kirk's assassination is considered, trans movement, and then people are also saying that it's not just trans. So a lot of people were assuming that it's a trans-related shooting, but they said that okay, that assumption is right, because this guy used to had a trans partner. Then they're saying that if we study this guy, we are also gonna find an SSRI link. Now, is that gonna be true? Is that gonna prove to be true? I don't know, but let's find out, right? Let's find out. So with that, we come to the end of the 112th episode of Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis. Right before we punch in, I hope you had fun. I had a lot of fun. I hope it added value to you. It definitely added a lot of value to me because I read a lot because of you. So thank you so much for joining. I need to thank Mr. Ashutosh Bhandekar, Mr. Aluwalia, Mr. Balson Gorai, Ms. Shivani Rajgaria, Mr. Raju Kumar. Thank you so much for all the subtitles, labeling, indexing of the episodes. We have reached like 50 episodes, I guess. So very shortly, if you're so kind to continue with your pace, we'll have all the short episodes labeled. That's gonna be amazing. The next step would be probably to have some sort of clips. Maybe some community member will jump up. But Mr. Kumar, thank you so much. Mr. Varun Bhardwaj, Mr. Tishar Tiwari, of course, and and everybody else who joined. So thank you so much. I hope you had fun. Mr. Varun Bhardwaj says, see you tomorrow. To which I say, it's time for us to punch in. I wish you a beautiful day, personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time. Hopefully. I always add hopefully, because how much of life is in our control, right? Not a lot. So hopefully we'll see each other. Take care. Bye-bye.